Welcome back to Twin Flicks. We are always celebrating the magic of film and physical media with you. Now, if you're new to this channel, what we do here in a nutshell is majority of the time we do 4K versus Blu-ray comparison reviews, where we take the 4K and the Blu-ray and do side-by-side reviews with some screenshots so you can compare the difference, and I also do a comparison review. Some recent reviews I did was a 4K versus Blu-ray comparison to Dario Argento's Phenomena. This was just released by Arrow Video and Synapse. And I am still working on the 4K versus Blu-ray comparison of American Wolf in London from Arrow Video. Some ones I have coming up is Eastern Promises from Kino Lorbe, but the one, and I'm not sure if this is out yet or not by the time you see this video. I did shoot it already, but this is the one that I am the most anxious to do, and that is 4K versus Blu-ray comparison of the Godfather trilogy, because there is a vast difference. In fact, it's almost unfair to compare the two formats because the Blu-ray doesn't even compare to the 4K. That gold, orange, sepia look that was bathed in the Blu-rays, it's gone. And it's been reverted back to the original source intended look. But today we are taking a look at Arrow Video's release. Now, this is not going to be released until April 12th, 2022. So this is an early review. And that is with Arrow Video's 4K UHD presentation of Frankenstein. And we are comparing it to the original 2009 Blu-ray release, which looked great, by the way. So let's get to it. Now, in the late 1980s, renowned filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola wanted to take his turn and dive into the literary world of the monster world. His idea was to go back to the original source material from Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, and give audiences an accurate adaptation of these classic novels. His goal was to bring Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, back to audiences with a more realistic depiction, more of a serious tone, and gore. His first outing was 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula that he directed and produced. Then he went on to only produce Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which was directed by very green Kenneth Branagh, who has come out in various interviews and admitted that he realized, looking back, that he was just too inexperienced of a filmmaker. He was too new as a director to take on such a huge project like this. And when you watch the movie, it definitely shows. Now, in 2018, Sony went back and fully restored Bram Stoker's Dracula in a beautiful, gorgeous 4K UHD release. And now it is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein turn, this time released by the folks over at Arrow Video. But the question is, does this 4K live up to the highly impressive Dracula 4K? Or how does it live up to the already 11-year-old Blu-ray? Well, let's find out. And also stay tuned at the end of this video for a rundown of the new special features Arrow included in this 4K set. And as always, I have screenshots here so you can compare the differences between the 4K and the Blu-ray. So let's see what we got. So Mary Shelley's Frankenstein has a new 4K UHD restoration from the original 35mm negative with a 4K DI, 2160p resolution, and carries both HDR and Dolby Vision grading. As for the audio, I'll get into that after the video review. And the results? Well, I have to say that when you first put in this movie and start it, it's not going to knock your socks off right away. This is kind of a deceptive looking 4K. The opening cold Arctic sequence was always intended to look just that. It's cold and dark, grayish blues, dull colors, and cold. It looks cold. And the color grading evokes that atmosphere. However, it looks rather flat and grainy with some grainy spikes in it. Now, I did compare the sequence with the 2009 Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray does look darker and even more grainy than the 4K. So while the opening is rather flat looking and grainy, it's still brighter and has better stability than the Blu-ray does. So don't let that opening sequence deceive you, because that changes once we enter into Dr. Frankenstein's backstory, where colors start to seep in and now has vibrancy and clarity. I was actually really impressed by the blue and yellow dresses. The outfits really pop nicely. One scene in particular that stood out to me was a very beautiful visual of Dr. Frankenstein and Elizabeth running up the Gothic-style staircase with lightning strikes that fill the image. It's incredible looking. Skin tones also look natural, while comparing it to the Blu-ray, the skin tones looked too red. Outside shots look brilliant and bright with nice saturated lush greens, reds, blues, yellows that pop, and the snow over the Swiss Alps have whiter whites. The ending when Frankenstein is in the Arctic hunting down the monster looks tremendously better than the Blu-ray, with more depth and detail. And inside the ice cave when Frankenstein and the monster have their confrontation looks great as well. And now I want to talk about the HDR grading and how well does that hold up. Well, the HDR grading is pretty decent. It shines with a lot more depth, detail, and finer levels, more finer details and shadow nuances. As you can see here, Frankenstein's lab has a nice color palette to it that's lit by red-oranges candlelight. Other interiors, such as the bedroom at the end of the film, also looks healthy and likewise is vibrant. There are also some very nice dimensionality to objects and facial close-ups that handles much better than the Blu-ray does. But one thing that I thought Arrow did was interesting with the HDR, and that I noticed, it's used as a tool to keep the colors looking more natural and balanced. For example, the burning of the hermit's cottage, while it looks terrific with the fire against the darkness of the forest and the monster's silhouette, or even the creation of the monster sequence, it doesn't go too far with big, bold, saturated colors. Instead, the HDR is used, as I said, as a tool to help give more balance to the colors, highlights, depth, so it looks much more natural and lifelike. And unlike the Blu-ray that ends up being plagued with crushed blacks and noise, the black levels are fairly on point here, but I honestly think the best part of this 4K is how well managed the stability of the images. The Blu-ray was fairly unstable at different times, really unstable, especially with the opticals. The 4K has fixed this with terrific image stability that I was pretty impressed with. Overall, I have to say that while Frankenstein won't blow your mind with the image quality, for a film that inherently has a fairly flat and drab look to it, Arrow Video's 4K UHD HDR release makes this look great, and honestly, it's about damn time. I think that you'll be very pleased with this UHD release. As for the audio, it includes 2 audio tracks, a DTS 5.1 surround, lossless mix, and the original stereo track. And from what I could tell, it's the same 5.1 track as on the Blu-ray, and while it's not a new Atmos mix or restored audio, it still gets the job done. The 5.1 track from the opening Arctic scene, there is a good amount of low ends and oomph to it. And especially during the sequence of creating the monster, you hear all the zips and zaps from the electricity in the room, in the soundscape, and the music is swelling. It just sounds terrific. Thunderstorms sound great as well, with lightning strikes and thunder that oozes out of the surround channels. And the ending sounds terrific as well. However, I have to say, outside of those few sequences, the surround channels are much more at bay and not utilized very much at all. It's a much more front-heavy mix than a surround-heavy mix. So while it's an effective 5.1 surround track, it's definitely not something you're going to run to grab and show off your home theater system. So I'm giving Arrow Video's 4K UHD presentation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The video I'm giving a 4 out of a 5, and the audio I'm giving a 3 out of a 5. It is definitely a step above the 2009 Blu-ray and worth picking up. But I could be wrong. You tell me, out of these 2 screenshots, when you compare the 4K to the Blu-ray, which do you think looks better? And again, the street date for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein 4K is April 12th, 2022. Definitely pre-order it. And as always, keep doing your part in keeping physical media alive, and we'll see you next time.